Welcome to the Spark by Hollywood podcast. I am your host, Devorah Goldberg. In this podcast, I guide my listeners through a deeper look into the parallel paradigm of Hollywood versus Jewish love, relationships, and empowerment, and uncover which one is truly attainable and sustainable for all to achieve. Thank you for listening. Welcome, everyone, to the Sparked by Hollywood podcast. This podcast is all about shining the unique spark beyond the typical and traditional Hollywood love. I'm super excited about today's episode because we are joined by the one and only Adriana, known on Instagram as @non-Jewish Nanny. I'm really excited to just delve even deeper into the topic of Hollywood culture, of love, relationships, and women empowerment. So without further ado, Adriana, welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Hi. Thank you for having me.
My absolute pleasure. And as we were chatting just a few minutes before we started, I was telling you that the first time I saw you show up on my Instagram handle, either it was a story or a reel, you were talking about the fact that you were at one of your jobs and you had walked into one of the bedrooms and you're like, yeah, I saw these two beds here, and you had some kind of reaction. And I was like, this is so cool, because the episode that I just put out that week was about sleep divorce and the fact that it's not really typical to have two beds in a master suite, in a master bedroom. And I was like, this is so cool that we can have this perspective from someone who calls herself the non-Jewish nanny, but is really introduced to all these Jewish concepts. So I just want to just step back for a second and just ask you, what inspired you to use that handle, the non-Jewish nanny?
So I guess originally my handle was my typical handle I've used my whole life, which is Adriana Rose. A lot of my friends call me Rose. My family calls me Rose. It's my middle name, but it's just kind of a nickname. But basically, non-Jewish nanny. Yeah, I think about it, and like I am the only hashtag that uses hashtag non-Jewish nanny. So once I started making the videos, that hashtag became kind of viral, and so did my videos. And I don't know what made me choose that title specifically, but the reason I kept it, I didn't change it to the non-Jewish nanny or like a nanny non-Jewish. Like I changed it to non-Jewish nanny, completely like straight up a lowercase, because it's what I've always used by default. Because like when I tell myself to when I explain myself to the kids, I'm like, oh, I'm not Jewish. Like when I have to explain things, I'm like, I'm not Jewish. Or I will literally tell people like, oh, I'm a nanny for Jewish people. And then they'll say, oh, are you Jewish? And my answer is, well, I'm a non-Jewish nanny. So like they'll call me a non-Jew sometimes, the kids. So okay. So what I've called to other people is like, I'm a non-Jewish nanny for Jewish, like Orthodox Jewish families. And then I'll go on my story. But like, that's how the name started. And the people love it. And it's great.
That's amazing. I just feel that your energy is just so effective. The way you showcase yourself on Instagram, and the way you tell your stories, and you show your life as a nanny. And I love actually how you give the privacy to the families as well. So you don't show the children, obviously that's probably the way it's supposed to be, but you show the life, you show, the Aleph base that you're learning with them, and you're teaching them, and your positive way of teaching them, whatever it is, either playing with toys or going on walks with them. And I love that aspect of it. And
you know that like a lot of my kids saw the Aleph Bay's video, and they like literally like came up to me, or like their mothers text me and they're like, oh, like my kids saw you sing Aleph Bay's, and like they were so happy. And I was like, that's so sweet. The kids were like, oh my gosh, like I heard you learned Aleph Bay's, sing it for me. And like I did, and they were so impressed. They were so happy. Like that's why I'm so happy to learn from my Instagram followers or my TikTok followers, and like also be learning on the job.
That's great. So I wanted to ask you, how did you start? How did you find your first Jewish family, or how did they find you?
Yeah, they found me technically. Basically, I was living with somebody, a boyfriend of mine at the time, which I talk about pretty publicly. But I was living with someone who yes, like they paid for the majority of my rent, but I still needed to pay for a little bit of extra. I still needed to make some sort of money while I
Mhm.
was in grad school. And so I decided it was also during the pandemic. So like I usually would like work in restaurants or bars or whatever, like for side money, but I needed an extra side job just because like I needed a little something. And so I decided like, okay, hey, I'm just gonna like put my resume on care.com to do babysitting.
Mhm.
And then one mother found me, and I was not even didn't even think anything of it. But like I say this in a lot of my interviews, I literally was so clueless that I thought her first name was her last name because of like the different name. Like I'm not Jewish, and like Jewish names are very
Right.
different from what I'm used to. So I
Yes.
was like, okay, interesting last name or whatever. So that's what I called her, and now I know her very well. It's her first name. But
Right.
yeah, she basically just said, "Oh, you sound like a perfect fit for my kids. I have one boy, one girl, and but we're Jewish. Is that okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, like of course." Like, why is that a question? Like, I don't care. And then now I learned there's a lot to the job, but and I also unfortunately have now learned as well that with everything anti-Semitism and negativity out there in the world, some people might not have been okay with that, but like the thought never crossed my mind to not be okay, to think of it as any different of a family or a job. And once I started with one family, just the way in the Jewish community is so loyal and travels so quickly. They
Yes.
all like liked me, and word traveled pretty fast. And within a couple months, like I was literally like booked full time.
That's amazing. So you're basically only nannying per se, if that's a verb. You're nannying only for Jewish families.
So, I mean, I do have one family that is like not Jewish that like I try to keep always on my schedule. Like I have some people that I always try to keep like dear and near to my heart because like I think that they're special. I've been with them for a while. One family who, every few months or so they message me to come babysit. But other than that, like my day-to-day life, like I'm with the Jewish families. They all
Yeah.
live in the same neighborhood. They all go to the same schools. I mean, I let's be honest, I babysit for so many that they all do go to the three Jewish schools in this area, but um, it all works out because of like sometimes they go to the same school, sometimes they go to the schools next to each other, sometimes they live next to each other. Like I'm always bouncing around from house to house, and it's honestly great. It's weird when I go to a non-Jewish family because I'm like, oh wait, none of this matters. It doesn't matter what I feed them. It doesn't matter what we play right now. It's not muksa. It's not Shabbos. Like it's different. So
Amazing. And I love
it's
how it just
so
flows off your tongue. Like you're just like, yeah, Muksa Shabbos, yes.
it's my life. It's my life. Literally today at my cooking class, my boyfriend was like, I love your sneeze dress. So sneeze. My boyfriend said that now. And
That's
I said, thank you. And it's so pretty.
right. So let's kind of hop into that point that about these terms that we have in Judaism, where either people don't know about it, or if they know about it, they're like, "Oh, that's weird. That's just this like old school Jewish thought." Because we live in a world so enamored by Hollywood and everything that it stands for. How did that impact your life to be introduced to all these Jewish concepts, even something as basic as Shabbos or kosher? Tznius is like another level, but even the
I
basic,
feel
how did that
yeah.
impact you?
I feel like SNEA specifically, I feel like growing up all my life, like if we're talking about Hollywood, everything Hollywood pushes, in my opinion, like is about, wearing like the very, I don't want to say scandalous clothing, but like even as a high schooler, I look back to the things I wanted to wear in school and I was like, no wonder my parents fought me on that. Like I should not have been wearing that. But like, that's what everything was out there at the time. And
Mhm.
in some of my clothes in college and stuff, I'm like, oh, whatever, I was a college kid, but like I don't really like to dress like that now because I like to be like perceived as more like classy, educated, and like beautiful rather than like the look where I would feel like I was going for in college, where I was like, oh yeah, I want to be sexy, I want to be hot, not
Yes.
necessarily the look I go for now. Um, as for like, I guess this kosher, yeah, I talk about this all the time. I literally thought like kosher was just like not having a cheeseburger, or even like I thought kosher salt was part of it. I had no clue, like none of it.
Yes. Right.
And then at first it was like, no dairy and meat. And I was like, oh, okay. But then I realized the plates and I was like, oh my gosh, this is
The
way
real
different.
stuff.
this is way different than what I knew.
Hmm.
And then Shabbos, once again, it was like Shabbos, like, oh, and then I don't remember the first time a mother ever explained to us, like, that's the thing, the mothers never usually don't. The kids explained to me, like, it wasn't like the mom was like, oh, I'll pay you after Shabbos. Like, no, it wasn't like that because I didn't watch on Shabbos for a while. It was probably when like the kids were like, yeah, on Shabbos we do this, and the kids will just casually explain it because exactly kids have no filter. And
Right.
I'd be like sitting there kind of chatting with them casually, like, oh, so what? And then I ask them more questions, like, and that's the thing, like a lot of non-Jewish or a lot of Jewish people who follow me are asking, like, oh, so like you didn't know about this, and like, yeah, no, me and my friends, like none of us knew about any of this stuff, and
Right.
I teach my friends and my roommates, and like we're all like interested in it, and kind of like, wow, so like they don't do anything on Shabbos, like they do their own thing, but like they don't have to work, like they don't watch
Right.
TV, they don't use their phones, and I'm like none of it. And they're like, that's so crazy. But like, it's not in a bad way. Like, we feel like, wow, like, I feel kind of like what I feel personally is I feel very impressed with it. I also kind of feel like that must be nice. It must be, I think Shabbos is a very beautiful concept. And
It is. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's beautiful. Yeah. I was just with all my kids on Shabbos today. And I had to leave for a good gap of the time, but like it's just like we were playing Shabbos party this morning, tea set. You know what I mean? It's just like the wholesome stuff that like you don't have your kids fighting with you to play, to watch TV, to watch a
Yes.
show that they shouldn't be watching because like no, they would rather be playing like Shabbos party tea set with you, and that's so sweet to me.
Exactly. And it's the concept of that we actually get to see our kids face to face, see our spouses face to face, actually have a conversation around the Shabbos table. I was actually just reading this book, just like small anecdotal stories. Like every morning, I just read a little bit, and then I was like, "This is so beautiful. I think we should be speaking about this around the Shabbos table." So we passed around the book, and everyone read a little page, and it was just small lessons in life. And I was just sitting there, just so grateful for that moment that we are forced to be silent and not have the outside world,
Yes, I
surrounding
feel
us.
like the outside world and Hollywood per se, anything on TV, it really tries to, and let's be honest, we live in South Florida as well, one of the most fast-paced lives. I mean, what is there?
Yes.
There's Miami, New York, LA, and we live in South Florida, like, and such a fast-paced lifestyle where I feel like somebody like me, I have the idea of like, oh, it would be nice to have a family dinner, or oh, it would be nice to, and even growing up, my mom would be like, oh, it'd be nice if we could all be at dinner tonight and like we'd all have our own plans, oh, I have soccer practice,
Right.
oh, I have rehearsal, oh, I have friend's house. But with like the Jewish community, like it is serious. It is like, no, it's Shabbos. Like there is no excuses. Like you are there, and that is it is like law, and like it's like thinking, like, thinking back on my childhood and my life today. Granted, half the time I'm working on Shabbos, but sometimes I think like, wow, it is nice whenever I do get a time with my family and friends, like to just be
Yes.
with them. And I
Yes,
think it's very
absolutely.
lucky.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on something really important, Adriana, where we have specific customs or laws which are built into Judaism, especially within relationships and marriage. And I just want to hop back to the original question, or what we started off with, is that one of the things is that we the basis of the reason why people have two beds in the bedroom is actually not black and white, as you may know. It's actually not written
Nothing
in
with
the Torah,
Judaism.
right?
Nothing with Judaism is black and white, in my opinion.
Well,
I mean,
what we're
certain things
saying is,
are,
what's
but
that?
I was like, certain things with Judaism are black and white. For example, tying your shoes or whatever else. But like at the same time, there's so many different concepts like sneas or just even the beds. Like it's literally like not black and white. Exactly. It makes so much sense to me.
So,
But
yeah. So what I mean by not black and white is that meaning it doesn't actually spell it out in the Torah, like go buy two beds when you get married. The basis of it is that when man and woman get married, we have built in within our relationships that 2 weeks out of the month we don't have sex with each other. And the reason and the way it's built in is it's actually dictated by the woman's menstruation cycle. So when she starts, I'm sure you know this, but I'm just going to speak about it more for our listeners, that when she starts menstruating, that's when they separate physically. So it's easy to tell a kid, right? you can't have lollipops, but you have lollipops scattered all around the house. Or you can't watch the TV show, but Big Brother is watching the TV show that he wants in the room next door, and the kid's going to walk in and see it. I want to watch too. So it's very easy when we say you can't have something and you say, okay, I won't have it. But then you know that our natural desire, especially as man and women, is we want to be connected. We want to be sexually connected. But the Torah knows that, and Judaism knows that you have too much of something, it's going to dull. It's going to get, it's just going to be like second nature, and it's not going to be exciting. So when people talk about the spark in marriage, like, oh, how do we enlighten the spark? When he first proposed to her, we want that all the time. So Judaism is like, well, here it is. Every single month, make sure you take that break, pull apart from each other and come back. So the rabbis teach us, hey, you want to be extra careful and make sure you don't actually end up having sex when you're not supposed to. So just separate in your own beds, or make sure that you're not getting too close physically, and you won't come to touching affectionately and then leading into the sexual intimacy. So, but for a lot of people, I mean, I even wonder, when I have cleaning ladies in the house, or if I had a nanny in my house when my kids were little, like what their thought was when they saw the two beds. And generally we don't talk about it. They just see two beds and that's what it is. But what was your first reaction?
So,
yeah.
Like, why, I should ask you, why is it that you exactly, you have the two beds and then, I don't know, you don't feel, and I guess you don't feel because no one felt the need to explain it to me. But exactly, you don't feel the need to explain to the non-Jewish person, well, yeah, our beds are like this because just because we're Jewish and it's for some type of law. Instead, a lot of the no one a lot of times no one really explains to me, and that's what's so fun about my life, because it's I have to sit there and for a good week or so sit there and be think about it, or the kids say, and let's be honest, all my moms especially since my page have started, and so many people, if you ever any questions, please text me, please message me, which is so sweet. But no, when I first saw it, I mean, let's be honest, no matter whose house I am, I'm not going to go into their parents' room. It's always been don't go in mommy and daddy's room. Right. But then I saw the beds. I remember I saw the beds the very first time and remember being oh, maybe they're moving, or, oh, I don't know. Then I went to another house and then saw, oh, this bed is very nicely made like this. It's definitely meant to be this way. And then being oh, maybe they just really like big beds. Maybe they're just, I said, really fancy, really wealthy. They want to have two king size beds together. That's dope. That's cool. And that's what I said in my video. I was that's dope. I hope I have a big enough house one day that I can do that with my bed. Why not?
Right.
And low key, thinking about it, what is I think that's honestly fantastic to be able to cuddle with your lover, and then your boyfriend, whatever, and then your boyfriend, husband, and then just be all right, I'm going to my bed now, and then just sleeping, but you're still with the person. And so that was my original thought. I was oh, that wouldn't bother me at all. I always think if I was Jewish and someone told me I had to live that way, which is not how Judaism is, it's what you want to do, I wouldn't be bothered. Really, I wouldn't. And so I think it's very interesting. And I think your point on the fact that you think it really helps with the marriage and the spark. I mean, to be honest with you, I am with families all the time, and I've never gotten a sense of an unhappy marriage in a Jewish home. I really have not. They have tons of kids, and they just all seem so content and happy. And people have asked me before, oh, have the I mean, I don't know if this is inappropriate to say, but the people have asked me oh, have you ever been hit on as a nanny? And I'm absolutely not. Absolutely not in the Jewish community. Yeah. I've worked for a non-Jewish family where that kind of happened. And I was okay, didn't go back there, but never even close in the Jewish community. I think it's just because they're very strong in their morals and they're very happy in their marriage. And maybe these are the reasons why.
Well, that's a great point you bring up, because definitely Jewish marriages have to be worked on as well. Like there's no marriage which is perfect, but these
Perfect.
like morals, what you're talking about helps us kind of stay in line, if that makes sense. Meaning
Yeah.
if you're waiting 2 weeks out of the month to get back with your lover, with your husband, and you want to be sexually intimate, you're literally counting down the days. Okay, 5 more days to go, 4 more days to go, and she's almost done, and 2 days, and the 2 weeks are going to be over. And I use the 2 week term loosely because sometimes it's like just under 2 weeks. Sometimes it's just over 2 weeks. It depends on her menstrual cycle. And then it's 7 clean days afterwards. So 7 days of not seeing any blood. And then I don't know if you're familiar with a mikvah, but on the 7th day, she immerses in the mikvah, and then they can resume sexual intimacy. And like I said, there's no marriage which is free from of things that you have to work on. I'm the first to say that I'm constantly working on my marriage. I mean, my husband told me the other day, hey, let's go out. And I said at the end of the evening, I'm like, thanks for asking me out today. And that's usually something where it's like a dating term. But no, you have to continuously work on that courtship and working on things together. So when we were talking about the 2-bed issue, one thing that I brought up in my episode is that on 2 separate accounts, 2 friends of mine had mentioned to me that, their husband was away or they were going to be away for the weekend and they were so excited to have the bed to themselves. And it's interesting how 2 beds became a Jewish concept, but at the same time, it can really benefit anyone in society who just wants personal space. Like you said, it's cool to cuddle and then go to your own space and be like, I can spread out like a starfish and I don't have to worry about rolling over to someone else or them rolling over to me.
Yeah. No, exactly. Like that's what I meant by my post, that I was like, I mean, well, that's kind of what's so beautiful and interesting about Judaism for me is it's like, if I were to do that, the reason behind it is because, oh, maybe I want my own type of comforter, or oh, maybe I want my own space. Maybe I don't like the pillows you use. All those things are very valid. But the reason you guys do it could be for all those reasons I listed, but also, like you said, for the actual like meaning behind it, which, yeah, and that's why people always ask me like what I take away from the Jewish religion. It's stuff like that you think about it like a little harder, and you're like, yeah, and that's why when it came to being in my next relationship after a very, very bad relationship, I really made sure to find somebody who shared the same mindsets and morals that I did. And I do think I'm with somebody right now who has a lot of the same genuine and wholesome mindsets behind, which I feel I've taken from Judaism, but just being around them all the time, just like, yeah, it's literally my life. You mentioned like, oh, these words flow off your tongue so easily. I'm like, it's because it's my life. Like I am here all day long, every single day.
That's special. That is really, really special. He definitely knows the word sneas. I'm sure he knows more, and I'm sure you're teaching him more and more.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he just knows that like they're good people, and just last night we were having a conversation where we were just talking about, like the market and just how things are so expensive nowadays. And he was saying, you're really lucky. He said, you're really lucky you work for a population of people who are really good people, really trustworthy and loyal people, and really generous people. And I was like, I agree. Like, I feel like no matter how hard things get, so many of my families are very, very loving people. And like, I would never feel like, I don't know, I would never feel like I was put in a position where like, oh, I can't do this anymore, because like my families are really good people.
Okay. That's beautiful. I'll just ask you one more question.
Okay.
Is there anything that stands out in your mind that kind of parallels between Hollywood or paradigm love or celebrity life out there that we all look at like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. I'd love to have that. But then when you look at the Jewish families that you nanny, you see the Jewish value that stands out for you. I know I bring up a number of topics in my episodes, but is there something that stands out for you? We spoke about Shabbos, we spoke about kosher, we spoke about 2 beds in the bedroom, but there's an array of topics. Is there anything that stands out for you that's like, wow, this is the real deal, and it's a little bit more than this paradigm that the whole world kind of takes takes on for themselves? Or is that a trick question?
No. I feel that I feel like so much of Hollywood, I guess, if it came to relationships, and my own personal opinion is
Mhm.
sometimes I look at the Hollywood stars and or whatever Instagram influencer you might follow, and you think, wow, their life must be so amazing. You know, they're just traveling the world, staying in these lavish hotels, taking these crazy vacations, maybe with their kids, maybe without their kids. Um, but then you also take a step to look at how fast paced that lifestyle is. Or, I mean, think about all these Hollywood people who they're in public relationships and their family is extremely public with vlogs and stuff. And, uh, and then I've seen vloggers and stuff where then they get a divorce, or then the kids, they don't want to be online anymore. And it's like,
Mhm.
exactly, like that's what's the issue with so much of the society. And I don't even want to call it an issue actually, because to each their own. But like, if it was for me, and that's another reason why I try to keep my kids like in my family's just not, I try to make my videos about me and my personal day, not necessarily like I'm never going to be like, oh, put a little baby up there who like doesn't want to be there. Because
Right.
I'll believe me, I have plenty of kids who want to be on my camera. That's not the issue. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Most of my kids want to be on the camera, but it gives a more fast paced lifestyle that I think is necessary. And then when I look back to my Jewish families who celebrate Shabbos and are or observe Shabbos, I guess,
Right.
and think about how simple that day is compared to like a day of like full traveling, going out to eat, taking photos, taking videos, interview this, interview that. Like it's like if I were to actually do a true day in my life, like, oh my goodness, like it would be absolutely insane. And I think, how do these Hollywood people do this? How do they literally document their days
Hmm.
for Instagram and TikTok? Like, I'm like, how do they do that? Because here I am trying to do a simple day in my life. And like,
Hmm.
when I tell you I don't even get it all, and it's like exhausting for me to do a day in
Yes.
my life. And
Yes.
it's because, and then by the end of the day, I'm like, oh my gosh, it doesn't even matter. I don't even want to do this because I'd rather just be here in the moment with my kids. That's how I feel.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of the Jewish people have that correct for many reasons during the week and also on Shabbos. And
Hmm.
like I said, they really inspired me to find somebody to hopefully start my life with in the future, where they view that the same way. Like they don't want to just like throw their kids aside, and they do want to try to spend family time. And oh, maybe we're not going on that nice of a vacation. It's actually very sweet. My boyfriend
Hmm.
said, oh, like it's interesting that like you go on vacations like with your families, because like when I like have kids, even when we have
Hmm.
kids or whatever, like I wouldn't want to leave my kids. Like I would rather go on vacation and like take my nanny and my kids with me. That way, like my
Yes.
kids are with us. Like I'm like, that's really sweet, Like I feel like a lot of people don't think that way anymore. And I'm glad that I am somebody who I think you should trust with your kids when you do have to go on vacation that are not kid friendly, whatever else. And find someone like me, other than I don't even know what other type of facility, but it's definitely, the Jewish people are definitely more mindful. They're definitely more family oriented. And like, that's why they really inspire me.
That's beautiful. I think you are a true inspiration. I'm sure not only to your families, not only to your kids, not only to the moms and dads who probably just appreciate your values and the the quality of care that you give their kids, but you are just a spark of light to the Instagram world, TikTok world. I'm not personally on TikTok, but I found you on Instagram and I absolutely love watching your quality videos, even if it's just as you see it's just a day in your life, but it's just quality and it's positive. And I think
Yeah.
we need more of your kind of content. And I'm just looking forward to seeing more content that you put out. And I just wanted to thank you for coming on tonight, and thank you for joining. Want to wish you best of luck.
Bye. Thank
All the
you.
best. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. If you are loving the Sparked by Hollywood podcast, I would love if you can do two things for me. Number one, subscribe to this podcast to ensure that you never miss an episode. Number two, please rate and leave your review so that others like yourself will be able to find this podcast and enjoy it as well. And finally, I'd love to hear from you. Send me your feedback, your comments, your questions, even your aha moments to info@sparkedbyhollywood.com. We'll catch up in the next episode.